Hello. Hello, lovely, lovely people. And what am I doing? That's not what I want. I want this one. And then I'm going to go to here. And we're going to go to there. And we're going to see that. So yes, welcome to School of Grok. And we are actually going to learn stuff this evening. I am going to teach you C# from scratch and .NET and all those things. Hi Dave, thanks for stopping by. Hi Des. So yeah, people dropping in. So yeah, I'm going to run these as streams. And work out when the best time is to do the streams, and people can kind of stop in and see what's happening. And then I'm going to edit them a bit, and I'm going to upload them to YouTube and put it together as a kind of course on YouTube. Hello, Undated. Hello, person. So yes, I'm going to teach C#. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is why you would want to learn C#, because there are hundreds of programming languages. I feel like I've used hundreds of programming languages over the course of the last 40. I've been doing this for 40 years. But yes, there are lots of programming languages to choose from. So what makes C# so great? Why would you want to learn C#? Basically, C# it's a fairly easy language. It's got lots of features. It's very modern. It's open source now. It didn't used to be. In the old days, it used to be a proprietary Microsoft technology, but now it's open source and it's all on GitHub, and it runs on everything. That's kind of the point with C#. It runs so you can create web applications with C#. So there's ASP.NET, which is for building web applications. So like the whole of Microsoft.com and StackOverflow.com, and thousands of websites, possibly hundreds of, maybe millions of websites run on ASP.NET. And now we've also got Blazor, which is the thing that I do on the stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And Blazor used to have to write your front end code, had to be JavaScript if you wanted code running on the front end. But these days, you can write C# and get that running in the front end, and you don't have to do any JavaScript. And then there's Xamarin, which is for building Android and iOS apps. So you can build apps for iPhones and Android phones and iPads and all that sort of stuff with C#. And Xamarin in the next version of .NET, which is .NET 6. Oh, let me turn the thing on. I'm just running it. And then I'm connecting with Twitch. All right. Image is working now. Yep, there we go. Oh, and I'll make myself small. That would be good. So yes, we got ASP.NET for websites and Blazor for front end without doing JavaScripty things. And we got Xamarin, which is becoming Maui in .NET 6, but at the moment it's Xamarin, and that's for building Android and iOS apps, so phones and tablets and things like that. Maui is replacing Xamarin, and that also supports macOS. So you can build apps for Windows and Mac and all that sort of stuff. Is it doing the thing? It didn't turn the source on for some reason. There we go, there's Perry. Hurrah! So yeah, multi-platform app UI, that does Android, iOS and macOS and Windows all from one thing. And then this isn't a Microsoft thing, this is a third-party thing, Uno platform. And this lets you build web applications and Linux applications as well, all from a single C# code base. And as if that wasn't enough, there's Unity, and there are other game engines. So there's the Godot game engine as well, and there are others. And you can build games with Unity. And we're not talking about just games like that run on your computer. There are games on Xbox and PlayStation, and lots of Nintendo Switch games are made with Unity. And yeah, that's all C# as well. I've got a game that I made called Cheese Times Tables, which is on the iOS App Store, and that was made with Unity. All the code for that was written in C#. So basically, C# these days, it runs everywhere. So you can learn one programming language and you can basically use it to do all the things. So that's why. So let's look at how to get set up with C#. So I've got a ton of stuff installed on my actual machine. So I've set up this virtual machine. So this is, if you don't know what a virtual machine is, it's like a computer running inside your computer. And so this is a fresh Windows 10 install that I set up earlier. Is the splash not working? Splash, there we go. But yes, so I set this up earlier on, and it's completely empty, and so we can go and we can install the basic things that we need. And so we're going to start out, we're going to go to .net like that, and that will take us through to the .net website, and we can click download here, and we are going to get .net 5, which is the current version, and I'm just going to click download .net SDK 5.0.301 Win x64. Oh, it did. I wasn't watching. But yes. So that's downloading there. What? No, all the splashes are going to be on the YouTube thing as well. There's no separating it out. It's fine. It's all fine. And we're going to run this, and we're going to say install, and we're going to say yes to that. And that's going to install Microsoft.net. That's in the SDK. So that's the software developers kit. So this is all the stuff that you need to build .net applications. And that includes C#. And so that's installing there. And we're going to close that down. And then we're also going to go to code.visualstudio.com. And we're going to download the latest build of code. So that's coming down here like this. And so there are lots of ways you can edit C# code. But the three main ones are Microsoft Visual Studio, which is a big application, and it is free, but it is it's big and it's heavy and it does lots of things, and it's a bit scary to start off with. And there's JetBrains Rider, which is not free. I really like JetBrains Rider, but it's not free. And then there's Visual Studio Code, which is an open source. It's made by Microsoft, but it's open source, and you can download it, you can install it on Mac, you can install it on Windows, you can install it on Linux, and it works across all of them. And so that's what we're going to use in the course here. So we're going to say open that file, and we're going to install Visual Studio Code, and that's going to go there, and then we're going to do that, and we're going to add, yeah, we're going to do that and that and that, and yeah, go and do that as well. And we're going to install Visual, so that's going to install our editor for us. Okay, excellent. And we're going to finish that, and it's going to launch Visual Studio Code, and then we're just going to right click here and say pin to taskbar to make that nice and easy to access. And then we're going to shut it down right now. Okay, awesome. Now, the next thing we're going to do, we got two more things that we need to install. And we can get both of these from the Microsoft Store on Windows. Now, if you are running on Mac or Linux or some other operating system, that's it. That's the three operating systems, Mark. Windows, Mac, Linux. If you're running on Mac or Linux, you don't need to worry too much about these because Mac and Linux already have terminals built in. Because yes, David, Windows Terminal is one of the things that we're going to install. Also, if you're on Mac or Linux, obviously you'll be downloading, when you click the download button on these two websites, then it would be the Mac version or the Windows version to get that. But in here, I am going to search for PowerShell because it turns out that PowerShell is now in the Windows Store. So when you're on Mac or Linux, you have a really nice shell built in, something like Bash or ZSH or Fish. But on Windows, the version of PowerShell that's built into Windows 10 is, it's ancient. It's so old. And so we want to get the newer version of PowerShell from the Microsoft Store. Yes, there is FreeBSD. I had forgotten about FreeBSD. Okay, and then we're going to launch. So this is the latest version of PowerShell. But this window that it runs in, if you run PowerShell just in its own window on Windows, it's a bit terrible. And I don't enjoy it. So the other thing that we're going to get is Terminal, which is, so we've got Windows Terminal here. And we're going to install this as well. And so the reason we're getting these two things is because we're going to be using the command line to create our applications. And so we're going to launch Windows Terminal in there. Okay. And I'm going to maximize that. So you might, if you've watched my regular stream, you might recognize this. This is basically what I use on my regular stream. This is where the intro runs and that sort of thing. So like here, see, it's dark theme, but it's the same thing. So I'm going to go CD // so that takes me back to the root of the disk. And so if I do dir here, you can see I've got my Windows and users and program files here. And so I'm going to say mkdir code. So that makes a directory called code. And I'm going to cd into code like this. And we're going to do ls, and there's nothing in here. And so then I'm going to make another directory called hello. And cd into hello. And then I'm going to say .NET new console, and it's going to spit out a whole bunch of scary stuff because this is the first time it's run. And then if I open this up, you can see we've got two files and a directory have been created. So we've got a hello.cs proj and a program.cs file. So let's open up this directory. So if I do code dot, then that will open the current directory, and I have to say yes, I trust the authors, and then we can see this program.cs. And so this is our first C# application. Now down here it's saying, do you want to install the recommended extensions for C#? And we're going to say, not just going to take your word for it, show me what the recommended extensions are. And we've got this C# Visual Studio Code powered by OmniSharp. So I'm just going to install this. And this is going to allow us to get kind of code completion. It will help us when we're writing C# code. It will let us do interactive debugging of applications and all that sort of stuff. And it's just super useful. So that's downloading. So it's downloaded a debugger and some language servers and all this sort of thing. Okay. So that's now active. and unpin the blue bar at the top. I'm slightly scared of unpinning the blue bar at the top. But yes, so I'm going to say yes to required assets to build and debug are missing from hello. I'm going to add them because it's nice. Down the side of code here, you've got 5 buttons. So this is the extensions tab here. The one that you want most of the time is the Explorer. But you've got this search thing here that lets you search in all the files in the directory. And so I'm just going to switch back to my terminal very quickly, and I'm going to clear this screen, and I'm going to just say .NET run, and that's just going to build and run the application that is in the current directory. And there you go, it says hello world, and we can see how it was made to do that, because here you can see it says console.writeline hello world. Okay, cool. Let's make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to get rid of the sidebar there so we can just look at what is actually in our program.cs file, and we'll talk about all the different parts of a C# application. So we have got using up at the top here. Don't worry about that right now. Then we've got a namespace, which is hello. Don't worry about that right now either. And then we've got a class program, and so this is our where our application lives, and we'll talk more about classes as we get more into C#. And then we have this static void main, and then string and 2 square, well, we've got a parenthesis there, and then string, and then the square brackets and args, and then we've got the close parenthesis, and we have all these curly braces all over the place like this. So I've got curly braces there, and I've got curly braces there, and I've got curly braces there. And the reason we have the curly braces is because C# is a curly brace language. It's based on the kind of original curly brace language was C. So C came out in the 1970s, and C was used to write Unix and old things like that. And so C introduced this idea. Well, other languages had done it before, but C was the first one that kind of really kicked off, and lots of people used it. So you have curly braces that start and end a block. So what we normally have is something like this namespace hello here, and then we start a block and end that down here. And so everything inside this block is in the namespace hello. And then we have our class program, and we've got curly braces here. So everything between these curly braces is in this class program. And then we've got a method here, this static void main, that's a method. And everything in these curly braces here is part of that method. Okay, so these curly braces define a block. And then we've got our instruction here, where we say console.writeline, and then we've got double quotes, hello world exclamation mark, and we close our double quotes. And we've got these parentheses here as well. So you see we've got those, they're up here on our method declaration, and they're down here. And what we're doing here is we're calling a method called writeline, which is on a class called console. So this bit here between the double quotes is a string, and a string in programming speak is a little chunk of text. It's essentially a string of characters, and that's why we call it a string. And as a programmer, you forget that that's not what string means to the vast majority of people. If you say string to a farmer, then he will assume you mean twine for tying up hay bales with and things like that. But when programmers say string, what we mean is some text. And so what we're saying here is call a method called WriteLine on the console class and pass it this string with hello world in it. And that's how we call the method. And then at the end of the line, we have a semicolon. And you have to end your lines with a semicolon. All your lines must end with a semicolon, except this one, obvious, and this one, and this one here. So these don't end with semicolons. Okay, so lines, basically a line either ends with a semicolon or it has a brace after it, and it starts a block. And then there's some slightly more complicated rules, but we won't worry about that too much for now. Okay, so this is our application here, and this is saying console.WriteLine hello world. So this is hard coded what we can put in here, but we could put other things in here as well. So we could put hello, what is your name? Like that. And then on the next line, we could say console.write. And instead of write line, we're just going to write. So this isn't going to start a new line after this. So we're just going to put a little, you might even have multiple semicolons in a line. Yes, we'll get into that at some point as well. But yes, so then after that, we're going to put console.write and like this, okay? And so if I just save that, and then I go back out to here again, and you'll see that it didn't really do very much at all there. Okay, and so then let's get the user to write in their name, and then they can press enter, and then we can say hello to them. So to do that, we're going to have to create a variable. And a variable is, so we're going to create a string variable, and we're going to say name equals, and then we're going to say console.readline. Okay, so this is going to say to the user, type in your name, say to the computer, let them type something in, and then when they hit enter, that's a line, and then put whatever they typed in into this variable here, which is called name. Okay, and then we want to say console.write line, and then we can put nice to meet you, and then now there's lots of ways that we could add the name on here, and we could do that, and then we could also add on another exclamation mark like that. Okay, so that works nicely. And so if I go back out and I'm going to run this again, and if I type in Mark and press enter, it says nice to meet you, Mark. And that works beautifully. When I was 9 years old, I think I was 9 years old, I got a ZX81 for my birthday. Yes, because I was 9 years old in 1982, and I remember not getting the ZX81 in 1981. So in 1982, I got a ZX81, and the first program that I wrote printed hello, what is your name, and then used on the ZX81, it was a command called input. You did input $, and then it printed nice to meet you, Mark. And that at that point I just made, in my sort of 9-year-old brain, it was kind of like, I've just made a television do something, which was amazing to me at that age and in those days. And that was what got me hooked on programming, and I spent the next 40 years doing it, and I'm still slightly concerned that somebody's going to realize I'm having too much fun and make me stop. Okay, so this was the way that you would have done this in older versions of C Sharp. We're currently, so this is C Sharp 9 that we're using now. .NET 5 comes with C Sharp 9. And in recent years, they've added a lot of very nice features to C Sharp. And one of the features they've added, and what I'm going to introduce them as early as possible. So I want to teach people modern C Sharp. I want to teach you the way that we do things now. I'm not going to kind of go, oh, there was an old way of doing this and it was terrible. And so if we put $, at the start of our string here, so this bit between quotes, we call this a literal. So in programming terms, in programming speak, when you put a value into your code, whether it's a string or a number, we call that a literal. Okay, and the compiler interprets that and goes, all right, this is an actual value. And so this is a string literal. If we put $, before our open quote, it becomes an interpolated string. Okay, and what interpolated means is you can put variables right into the string. And so if I do this like that, that will actually just replace the curly braces here. We like our curly braces in programming. We're going to replace the curly braces and the variable inside it. That will be replaced with our name value here. And that's a much nicer way of adding strings or building strings up. So if I change this like that and then do .NET run again, and we type in Bob, and it says, nice to meet you, Bob. Okay. So that was string interpolation. Okay, so that's quite nice. Let's think about what else we can do here. We could say, okay, I taught my daughter, I introduced my daughter to C Sharp, and this was the first program I showed her how to write. And then she went off and spent ages kind of building this thing out, and then came back and went, how can I make it say different things depending on what people type in? Okay. And so, which is a very, very good question. So let's say I want this to say, welcome back, Mark, if I'm Mark, but if you put in any other name, then it says, I don't know who you are, and alert, 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 and things of that nature. Okay, so to do that, we need to use some logic. And logic is very straightforward in programming. There's a keyword, if, and we put an if, and then we have to put some round brackets in there, and then I can say if name equals Mark, then I'm going to do something. I'm going to console.writeLine welcome back, Mark, like that. But if it's anybody else, I'm going to take this out here. So if it's not Mark, I need to say otherwise or else. And so we say if this variable is equal to this, then do this. Otherwise, else, do something else. And we'll say console.writeLine, and we'll put I don't know anyone called name. Go away. Like that. Okay. So now we can go out and we can run this. And if I put in Mark, it says welcome back, Mark. But if I put in Bob, it says I don't know anyone called Bob. Go away. Okay. So there we go. That is our first application, and we've already covered quite a lot of stuff. We've talked about strings, we've talked about using console.writeLine and console.write without line to not start a new line, so we get the cursor just starts flashing after the angle bracket. And then we get some input by using console.readLine, and then we use an if statement to do different things based on what the user inputs. So this is an excellent start. So I'm going to pull back just for a minute and talk about the rest of the stuff that is in this class here. So C# is what they call an object-oriented programming language. And that's quite a complicated concept, but essentially it means that everything happens, your program creates lots of objects, and those objects can talk to each other and use each other and create more objects and all that sort of thing. And so if you think about the user interface of an application, so like this window here is an object, and then this menu is an object, and then these menu items are objects, and so everything is an object. Even this string is an object. And objects have properties, so an object can have lots of different properties on it, and it can have methods, and the methods are things that the object can do. And so like the console object, the console can write things to the console, it can read things from the console. There's a whole bunch of other stuff as well. If I look at name, so you access properties and methods on objects with dot. So if I do name dot, because I've got the C# thing plugged in, you can see that we've got all these purple box things here are methods that are on the string object. And then we also have this spanner icon here, and that's length. That's a property on the string object. So the string knows how long it is. And so if I've typed in mark, then the length will be 4. Okay? But these are all things you can do to strings. You can turn them to change it to an uppercase string, or you can trim spaces from the start and end of it, and you can do all sorts of interesting things with it there. Okay, so when we write code in C#, we have to organize it into objects, except what we actually organize it into is classes. So every object is a class of object. So a string is an object of the class string, or an instance of the class string. And everything that happens in your program is going to be an instance of a class. And so all the code that you write has to go into classes, and all the bits of instructions that you want the computer to do have to go into methods on classes. And so this is our program class, and this is our main method. And we have to put that in there. You can't just write code outside of classes and methods. It has to go somewhere. And methods, if you've done Python or other programming languages at school, or JavaScript or any of that sort of thing, then you might know about functions. Methods are like functions that belong to objects. So in C# we generally call them methods, but I will sometimes call them functions because I'm old and I find it confusing, and sometimes they're functions and sometimes they're methods. But let's try and keep it straight for now, and we'll say this is a method. It is a method called main. And then we've got this thing here. We've got this string args that's being passed in here. Okay, and so what is this and what do these square brackets mean? Because down here we just say string, but up here we say string and we've got these square brackets. So the square brackets mean this is an array, and an array is a list of 0 or more strings, okay? And the args that are passed in here are the words that you type after the program from the command line. So if I go out to here, when I do .NET run, what I'm running is a program called .NET, and the first element in the args array will be set to run. Okay, so if that was what was being passed in there. Now if I do .NET run, when we're working on our application, this is how we launch our application. But if I do -- and then put mark after there, anything after the -- will go into the args array in my program, okay? So, which is just completely ignoring that at the moment. So I'm just going to go here and I'm going to say, I'm going to put string name up here. Okay, so I'm going to separate the setting of the variable from the declaration of the variable. So I'm going to declare my variable up here. And then what I'm going to say here is if args dot, and now we can see all the methods and properties that you get on the array object. So an array is an object which contains a list of other objects, okay? And so we also have a length on here. That tells us how many items there are or how many elements there are in the array. So we say if args.length equals 1, we can say name equals args 0, like that. And then we're going to say else. Stop splashing the screen, David. You menace. So, if they pass their name in when they run the application, then we're going to just use it from there. Otherwise, we're going to ask them to type it in. Okay, so now, if I do .NET run like this, then you have to type in your name like that. But if I do .NET run -- mark, then I don't need to type it in because I've already told it what that was. Okay. So this is an array, and it's an array of strings. You can create arrays of any class, any object. You can create an array of it in C#. You can even create arrays of arrays. And at some point over the course of this mammoth course that's going to stretch into the future, I will probably show you interesting reasons why you might create an array of arrays, but not tonight because it's scary. Okay, there's something else that I skipped over because I'm a terrible teacher. I don't know why you're watching this. I'm useless. Which is equals here. Okay, so up here I say if args.length equals 1. Okay, and then down here I say name equals args 0. Now when you say equals, the IntelliSense, the helpful pop-ups and things in Visual Studio Code are so good. I don't need to do this. I just download .NET, install code. It will teach you C#. Just get on with it. No. So equals is a logical operator. So it says is this thing the same as this thing? Is this thing equal to this thing? So is length equal to 1? So in if statements, or anytime you want to test to see whether things are equal, you have to use double equals. This equals here is just a single equals, and this assigns a value. So this says, take the value that's on the right side of the equals and assign it to the variable that's on the left side of the equals. Okay, so double equals for comparison and saying, are these two things equal, and single equals for assigning a value. The reasons for that are kind of lost in the mists of time, but C#, quick history lesson. So C# is based on C++, and C++ was based on C. And so we started out, we had C, like that, and then we had C++. And C++ added object-oriented programming, so it added classes and methods and things like that to C. And in C and C++ and C#, if you put plus after an integer variable, a number variable, then it adds 1 to it. And so C++ was a very funny joke about how it was adding 1 to C. And then C#, they were going to call it C++++, and then they thought that's just silly, because I'm not sure that would actually do anything anyway. So then they thought, if you put the C++ and the plus down there like that, then that's sort of like a hash symbol, isn't it? So that is why C# is called C#, because it's C++++, which makes C#. See? But in C, it did this really weird thing. So if in C you did char C equals get char, okay, that would read a character from standard input. And so that would assign the value there like that. But if you did this, then it would say, okay, I'm going to assign getChar to the C variable over here. And then this whole bit here is going to evaluate to whatever that character was. And characters are just numbers. So it would be somewhere between 0 and 255 in the original C, because we only had 255 letters in the old days. We've invented all the other ones since then. And so what C would do was say, if this is 0, then this is going to be false. But for any other value than 0, it's going to be true. And so you could actually write this. And it was super evil, because let's say you had another char D here. And if you did this and went C equals D, then that would work. That would compile, and then it would do something that you really, really didn't want it to do or expect it to do when you actually ran the program. Because what you wanted to do was this. Okay, now most of that has gone away with C#, and so it doesn't do this thing where it will automatically convert something to Boolean if you put it in an if statement. So whatever you put in your if statement here has to be a Boolean, and this equals operator returns a Boolean. A Boolean is basically, it's the simplest possible value in all of programming. A bool or a Boolean can either be true or false. That's the only two things it can be. There's no value for maybe, and there's no value for I don't know. So it's something is either true or it's false. And this is, if you go right down into the computer at the very lowest level and look at a transistor, you'll see that a transistor is essentially a tiny, tiny, tiny little thing that can either be on or off. And that's what a Boolean is. It can either be true or false. So you can store the value of a Boolean on a single tiny little transistor right down there in the guts of your computer. So this expression here, args.length equals 1, that evaluates to a Boolean. It's either true or false. You can't put something that is not a Boolean inside an if statement. So I can't say if args.length. In C, I would be able to do that. And it would say if args.length is greater than 0. And in JavaScript, actually, you can do this as well. JavaScript will convert values all over the place. It's actually quite hard to stop JavaScript from doing it. JavaScript, you have to use triple equals to make things actually the same. But this isn't JavaScript. So we cannot implicitly convert type int to bool. JavaScript can, C can, C++ can, but C#, they went, no, the madness ends here, this far and no further. They drew a line in the sand and they stopped it. Which is great because it makes it very, very difficult to do things wrong. Okay. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention here about this is this args0 thing here. So this is an array. And the two square brackets here on the data type, so this is where the data type of this variable, these square brackets just go, it's an array. Okay. Now, if I wanted to create an array of my own, if I wanted to say string stuff equals, I could say new string, and then I would have to specify how many elements I wanted it to have. Okay. So that would say this stuff array here has 4 elements. So I can put 4 strings into this stuff array here. And so I can say stuff0 equals foo, and stuff1 equals bar, and stuff2 equals QUX, and stuff3 equals Wibble. These are the 4 magic words of programming, by the way: foo, bar, quux, and Wibble. When programmers need a value to go somewhere, but they don't know what to put, they just put foo. And if they have another one, they put bar. And then you go quux and Wibble, and then it tends to split off. But these are the first 4 that we use. So we put 4 different strings into this array, and then we can pass this array around all by itself. No, they're not. They're not my own. They're definitely foo, bar, quux, Wibble. See, I told you this was a new machine. Quux, Wibble, wobble, wobble, and flob are also used in the UK. You've never heard of quux? It's been around for, I mean, if I take Wibble off, yeah, it's like foo, bar, baz, quux, quux. It's like right there at the start of the list. It was in the hackers lexicon and all that sort of thing. So yeah, foo, bar, baz, quux, quaz, corge, gralt. I've never heard of corge, gralt, garpley, Waldo, Fred, Plu, Zizzy, and Thud. Several of these are references to the game Colossal Cave Adventure. Okay, fine. But yes, So an array is a list of objects, and so we create it here and we say it's going to be this far. And then the first element in the array, and this is the most important thing to remember about arrays and lists and everything like that with computers, is the first element in a list or the first element in an array is number 0, because with computers we start counting from 0. 1 is not the first number because 0 is less than 1, and so we start at 0. And there are super interesting reasons why actually arrays start at 0, to do with memory layout and things called pointers and how memory was managed in C and all this sort of stuff. But the important thing to remember is that the first element in an array is 0, and therefore if you have an array with 4 elements in it, that means the last element in the array is 3. Okay, so we go from 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and I'm just going to very, very quickly do one last thing in this lesson, and then that will be it. Am I going to do one last thing in this lesson, or do I think that's probably a bit too much? No, I'm going to stop because that's enough there. So yes, our args array that gets passed in from the command line here, we say if the length equals 1, then we're going to say it's 0. Otherwise, we're going to use the value that was in the first args element there. Otherwise, we do the hello, what is your name, and all this sort of thing. And then we break out of that like that. Now, when I showed my daughter this, she then went off armed with her if statements that she knew about, and spent some considerable time going, what fresh hell is this with these semicolons? I don't understand why I have to end every line with a semicolon. The reason you have to end every line with a semicolon, incidentally, is because C# lets you do crazy stuff like this. So you can break a line across multiple lines. So other languages like BASIC and Python and things like that use line breaks to say, I have finished writing this line of code. But C and C-like languages, so C#, C++, Java, JavaScript, Rust, does Go have semicolons? I can't remember if Go has semicolons. Some languages get rid of them. JavaScript does this terrible thing called automatic semicolon insertion, which caused an enormous fight in the 2000s. But I think we moved past it, and everyone's kind of gone, all right, semicolons. But yes, C lets you, essentially you can lay your code out however you like, as long as the braces and the semicolons are in the right place. You can go completely bonkers with the rest of it. So I can put spaces in here and I can put spaces in here, and C# just, it will not care. It will build and it will run quite happily with all of that. So that's why we have the semicolons. It allows us to be tiny little anarchists with our code layout and just do really, really weird things. Sometimes you will write, you might have sort of very, very long lists of arguments that you pass into your methods. Sometimes you might have a method that returns a value and then you call another method on that and another method on that, and you end up with these chains of things. But yes, and you know, if you use that kind of creative layout like this, There are people who actually deliberately lay their code out like this, but those people are psychotic and should be heavily medicated and not allowed on a computer. But yes, so we don't do that as a rule, but sometimes you have very long method calls, or you have multiple method calls one after another, and then you kind of do dots on new lines and all sorts of things. But we're not going to worry about that too much for today. So multiple statements per line is worse. And there's a whole class of programming called code golf, which is how few characters can you write a functioning program in to do something. And it's bad because you can win at code golf, and then you can come back, you can go outside for a breath of fresh air and shout at some birds, or whatever you do with your spare time, and then come back in and you look at the code that you just wrote and you go, I have no idea what that does. How does that work? I know I just wrote it, but yeah. So we try and write our code and we lay it out nicely and all that sort of stuff. But yes, you can sort of because the other thing you could do, and I'm not going to, but you could. I'm not going to, he says, and then he does it. So yeah, this will work as well. Okay. See, this still builds and it still runs. It's just very, very bad. And we're not going to do it. Don't puke on my stream, David. All right. So that is it for this first lesson. We talked about where to get .NET from, what you need to install. So we installed .NET. We got the .NET 5 SDK. No, we really don't. We do not need a puke image. I'm not doing that. So we installed the .NET SDK, which we got from .NET. And we installed Visual Studio Code, which we got from code.visualstudio.com. And we installed PowerShell from the Windows App Store, which was 7.1.3 when I got it. And we installed Windows Terminal. And this is Windows Terminal here. And then we created our application with .NET New console. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next lesson and how that works. Yeah, then we went in, we installed the C# for Visual Studio Code powered by OmniSharp. I actually know the guy who wrote OmniSharp. He's very clever. But yes, so we installed this to make working with C# in Visual Studio Code easier. And then we wrote our first application and we made it do clever things. We learned about programs and methods and classes and strings and arrays and if statements and console.writeline and all this sort of stuff. And so, yeah, I think that's a pretty good start. There is a Discord. Stream Elements has just very nicely in the chat put the Discord on there. If you go to the Discord and sign up in there, where's the Discord? It's here like this. So here's the Discord. And that has arrived. Hello, welcome. There's a School of C# channel in there. And so if you have any questions, when the stream's not on, then you can go into the Discord and you can ask questions in there and I will answer them for you offline. And if you're watching this later, so now that I'm done with this on Twitch, I'm going to save it and edit it a bit and then upload it to YouTube. And so if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put links into the description and stuff down below for all the stuff that I installed and everything. If you've been watching now, I'm just about to put the links into the Discord, so you can go in there. Yes, David, you are going to be infamous. You're going to be that guy on that blockbuster YouTube series that everyone's watched, and now the whole world knows C#, and Mark Rendell's got 100 million subscribers, and he's like the PewDiePie of programming. And you'll be that bloke who was being silly on his first ever C# stream. But no, I'll put all the links into the Discord thing for the stuff that I downloaded. And if you're watching on YouTube later on, then they'll be in the description below. And I think I'm going to do this again on... Oh, please, just the first one, David, please. I think I'm going to do this again on Friday. It sort of depends on domestic situation. So I'll announce on the Discord and on Twitter and that sort of thing when I'm going to do the next one. It may be that it's just Wednesdays. We'll see how it goes. It may be that we start moving it. I don't know. I don't know. Why am I still talking? That's a good hour. That's how long I said I was going to spend on these things. And I think that's gone really well. So yeah, I'm going to download this. I'm going to edit it over the weekend, upload it to the YouTube channel, and then it'll be there. Cool. All right. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for watching. If you're not here now but you're watching it later, then thank you very much for watching. I hope it's useful. If you've got any questions, then if you're on YouTube, ask in the comments. If you're on Twitch, ask in the chat. If you're in Discord, then you can ask in the Discord. Any suggestions, any of that sort of stuff, things I could do to make it better, apart from, you know, changing my entire personality and the way I talk and my accent and everything about me. Because I'm not sure I can do that at this stage. I'm too old. But yeah, cool. All right, thanks very much. I'll be back on the stream doing more Stream Badger, bouncy, weird stuff tomorrow with Perry and all that kind of thing tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock UK time. And I will do the next one of these. It's either going to be Friday or the weekend or Wednesday next week. I will figure it out and announce it, but definitely Wednesday next week, if not before. Cool. All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Cheers and good night.